Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of Beyond the Ordinary Show. Um, I was marveling yesterday during the interview. I said season 27, and it just blows my mind how 10 years have flown by. And upon reflection and feeling into what's grown in those 10 years and how I've grown in those last 10 years, I'm just so full of gratitude for y'all in the audience, for y'all listening to the replay, the speakers that have come onto this show, how I've witnessed them evolve as well and shining. And perhaps it's in proportion to what we're ready to receive, but I'm sure it's an individuated process of self-growth as well. But really, in reflection, it's really miraculous where we are now. It's miraculous the type of quality of content and consciousness that we get to share on the show. And our guest tonight, Brandy Gillmore, is certainly exemplifies not only what's possible, but how to embody it. And today's conversation is going to be about that, about elevating your entire life, your energy, and healing by clearing. And Brandy's going to take us deep into it with her unique perspective and capacity that can be esoteric, but extremely grounded in application as well. And that's where I love living, because I know that's where these profound shifts and changes can occur. And so it's going to be a fantastic call. We'll probably open up to Q&A. And I'll say probably because I want to be in the flow. So I don't have an intention of direction other than opening up the energy for Brandy and for you all to be able to be in relationship and in receiving of what's being shared. If you're not familiar with Brandy, let me tell you a little bit more about her as I read her bio. So Brandy Gillmore is a world-renowned mind, body, and energy expert who is most well-known for her discoveries in self-healing and working with the power of the mind. Not only was Brandy able to heal herself from a wheelchair, walker, and cane, she's also been able to do something that has never been done before. She's able to coach people to use their minds to get back to healing results, even under alternative medical equipment, using only the power of the mind. Her breakthrough work has been featured in an award-winning documentary and various docuseries. Brandy speaks on stages around the world and has also given a mind-expanding TED Talk. Brandy has a genuine heart and sincere desire to help create a better world by sharing the discoveries that changed her entire life. And it's with that introduction, Brandy, that I want to welcome you back to BTO. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, John. It is so wonderful to be here. And I have to say, I love the way that you opened that up with just saying, you know, how different and incredible of changes of, you know, even 10 years, just the difference in transformation. And, you know, it's always an interesting perspective when you stop and think about it. I mean, for me, where I was 10 years ago, I had just got better. Like I've been better 12 years now, but wheelchair, walker, cane, all of that 10 years ago and 12 years ago now. But it just, when you were saying that, I was like, God, life has radically changed in a much different way than I even anticipated, in a beautiful way. But I just, yeah, I was just embodying what you were saying, and it's truly incredible.
And thank you for that. Yeah, and I don't know about you. You seem pretty consistent. You're like holding the space in the field. And energy is like, I know what's possible. I see the potential. Come on, let's get the mind, the body, and everything else in alignment, because life and abundance and joy and love are waiting for you. It's what keeps you in such a positive state of positivity?
Honestly, like programming my mind. And I love that you said that, like, that I do love to hang out in that esoteric energy, but also very grounded, because that's where the magic happens. And, you know, I would say that it was funny because even recently, there were some notebooks that I had going through my injury that I had, you know, tucked away. And the other day I was actually like, I looked through a couple of them, and it was so, you know, when I started working with the mind and understanding that our minds are so much more, and kind of getting into that power of the mind, it all felt so esoteric. It all felt like, okay, I've got to send some energy out and hopefully it happens, and then waiting on the universe to deliver. And I remember it felt like such a waiting process of, okay, well, I must doing everything right. And I'm waiting, and I'm okay. I have my vision and I'm healing, and I'm waiting for my body to heal, and I must be doing everything right, but I'm just waiting for my body to heal and trying this. And it was so esoteric. And just as far as creating the change, when I started to realize that I was wanting everything out here, I was wanting to change my life, and I was wanting to change my health, and I was wanting to feel good, and it was all like my mindset was more so about changing my physical condition and my circumstances. And when I really got that I needed to change inside of me, and I really got that, that was pivotal when I really got it, and then understood that I needed to make real change. And so when you ask why I'm always so happy, I literally, it programmed it into myself. So I can tell you that even in this week, I have been in happy tears multiple times for no reason and every reason, but just because I feel that way, and my life just unfolds in a beautiful way because of that. And I'm grateful. But I would say because of programming, mind programming.
Yeah, and I love that. And that actually brings me, it's like you're almost answering the question, or right in line with the question that was coming up for me. Today's topic is elevate your entire life, energy, and healing by clearing. And for me, the title of that in the past, and perhaps for a lot of people listening right now, has the implication, well, if I heal something, if I tune into an energy, that my whole life is going to be elevated right now to a place that I think that I want it to go. What does this topic mean to you, really, in context of what's possible, rather than what our expectations are that I think are indicative of a suffering or a limitation that we're trying to leave behind?
I love that question. And it has a couple, multiple pieces to it. One example, we'll say, starting kind of with health, just in general. What I love is that, let's start with the other one. Let's start with the base, like elevating your life. We'll go here first. There's a guy that I work with, a client, and who's had a lot of success. And one thing that just right off, starting and helping him to start programming himself for happiness and be more alignment with what he's wanting. A statement that he made was really profound. He was like, and he was in an airport in another country, and we were talking, and he goes, something that I've realized in staying more positive and feeling happier is that life isn't full of a bunch of gnats. You don't arrive at the airport and your luggage is lost, and then this happens, and then your taxi's late or your car is late, and then there's this, and then there's that. He's like, just by elevating my programming inside, I'm not experiencing all the gnats, is what he referred to it as. And I love the way he said that, because it's so true. It's like when you're in this flow, it's like, even if it's just you're going to the grocery store and you meet somebody who just compliments you, or you have this kind exchange, and it just feels like, God, happy humans, happy connections. And so that is a piece of it, where you elevate your life and you just are in more harmony, and you don't have all of the obstacles and this and that and the frustrations. And even if you simplify this, even if you think about, if something does happen, it's a completely different thing. Like, if, let's say, somebody's drinking a tea and they're already pissed off and they're frustrated, and they're drinking some tea and they spill it on their shirt. They're like, it's one freaking thing after another. And it's just, and it is. But let's say that somebody's happy and they're feeling positive, and they spill a little tea and they go, oh, here I am, 40 years old and still learning how to drink tea or something, or I have a hole in my lip. It looks like, joking around. And it's a whole different flow to life. And of course, that can affect your health. So that's one way where you just feel like it does just elevate your life, the gnats, so to speak, the day-to-day stuff. But when it comes to health, what I love about health, that, using my own life, is that if somebody would come to me and said, hey, you can change your life by changing your thoughts, I probably would have never figured it out because I didn't understand that real change. But what happened is that because it was my health, it was me. It was like I became to this awareness that to get real change, I had to really make a change to really heal my body. And as I did, that's when it really changed my life also. And what I love is that when something is off in our lives, that when we make a real change, that's when we see it life changing. And I know this isn't as clear as it needs to be. So let me clear this up a little bit. Let me use an example. That's always easier. So for example, and it's kind of the question is, it's got so many pieces to it.
Yeah, it does.
Let me unpack this and simplify even more. Okay, so first and foremost, when we look at healing for a moment, all the time you'll hear people talk about, healing with the mind. We know that the placebo works. So if we just look at that for a moment, we know research has shown back to back to back that the placebo can get radical healing results. So we know there's magic in our minds, if you will. And that is something that for me, when I was going through my injury, I wasn't really open to all of that stuff. And again, this was 20 years ago, but network engineering, raised Lutheran, it wasn't on my radar as to healing with the mind. But then I could see that with the placebo, that it's been proven that we have magic in our minds. We have that ability. And so that led me down a journey of going, okay, well, what is it and how does it work? It's much different than most people realize. But what ultimately, I started looking at a lot of anomalies that didn't make sense. For example, one that blew my mind was multiple personality disorder, that people can have different ailments when they're in different personalities. Like somebody, even recent research, there's a woman who was blind in one personality and she could see in a different personality. But
Oh, wow.
it's actual medical research. And not only that, but people can have asthma in one personality and not in another, or high blood pressure, or different body temperature, or all kinds of things, or pain. And when I was going through my injury, when I was starting to look at things like that, or like amputees still experiencing pain who don't even have a limb, this all led back to looking at the mind. And I thought, wait a second, there's something everybody's missing. If that is even possible, then what is it in our mind? And of course I came to emotions and I thought, we know emotions affect the body. That's small. And then I started looking at it and going, well, wait a second here. Research, if I looked at how much have emotions affect the physical body, you could see that there was the widowhood effect, or even broken heart syndrome. Or, and if you're familiar with the widowhood effect, by the way, it's a senior who loses his spouse has a much higher rate of death or broken heart syndrome, or even failure to thrive, where an infant who doesn't get enough love and connection can die. And I thought, wait a second here. If emotions can affect us to the point of death, then what are other emotions doing? Because you can see even like if somebody's like boredom has been linked to death, or you maybe heard bored to death or scared to death. And before I thought those were like, just a figure of speech. Oh, I was so scared to death, or I was bored to death. But no, those are actually linked to death. Somebody can be so scared, their heart can just stop because of an emotion. And so that's when I started really looking more at emotions. Now, basically, when we stop and look at emotions, you may have heard energy and motion, but emotions, they're releasing energy from us. And we could get a little technical here, and I don't want to try to get too technical, but if you think about neurons firing, when neurons fire, biophotons are released. And if you think about biophotons being released, that is energy. And a way to kind of simplify that is if you think about a remote control to a TV, that communicates to the TV via infrared. So that's photons. And so that can communicate to the TV. Or another type of photons is if you think about solar energy from the sun, that's photons. And so when you think about neurons firing, our bodies have energy. And so what happened is I started looking at the energy of emotions and understanding how it impacted the energy of the body. And that's when it became life-changing. But to answer the question specifically, it's that I started realizing that, you know, if you think about our thoughts help create our lives. And so what happened is when I started looking at the energy of emotions, we can see that the energy of emotions helps create our life. And a well-known example of that is if you think about, unfortunately, you know, you've maybe heard this in psychology, where there can be a woman who has an abusive father and she leaves him and finds the abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, that pattern continues on. And so all of the time people have patterns of rejection, patterns of hurt, patterns of loss, patterns of not feeling good enough or criticized or unloved or not fitting, like all of these patterns. And so when you lift yourself, you can get rid of the gnats, so to speak, and also you can change your life. Now, when it comes to a health issue, what I love is it's always, you know, you're taking some type of negative thought pattern, negative emotion, and you're shifting that. And as you do, you change your health and you change your life. And that was something that was just really amazing through my injury, is that, you know, my whole goal was to just figure out how to heal myself, how to get my life back. I was on morphine and injured and in so much pain. And when I started understanding the mind and the subconscious mind and really targeting specific information and shifting it, I shifted my subconscious emotions and energy to heal. But as a side effect, if you will, it changed my life. And so when you say, you know, when we talk about elevate your life, there's so many ways to elevate your life, and just being elevated and happy will help elevate your life and get the gnats out. And then also, of course, with specific things, like if it has to do with love, or it has to do with money or success or trauma or feeling criticized or the abusive father or whatever that is, then a lot of times what has to happen is you want to address those specific patterns as well. And so it gives you the ability to, you know, when you really understand how to use your mind, you can elevate any part of your life or every part of your life. So that's the complete answer, or the better answer.
No, and it's wonderful. And I love that you gave the different examples, because you're really grounding in where science and spirituality merge, where the romanticism and the linear approach converge to really allow for new creation to happen as our mind and our bodies can relax into the information. Because even that, we've been playing in the duality of the intelligence, the information that's there, but because of the separation, it really keeps us in a loop of really not being able to, as far as I'm concerned, really go into the core of what's available and utilize all the tools that are available to us to shift the patterns for our benefit.
Absolutely. And a lot of times what I'll see people who like, honestly, energy is fun. Let's be honest. Playing with energy is fun.
It is, yeah.
It is. And we also have to think about, when we're trying to utilize it for something specific, that we need to get more specific. And a simple example of is that if you think about the sun is solar energy, right? The sun is energy. It's photons. And if you think about it, you could go play in the sun, which is fun. You can get vitamin D from the sun. You can get some sun and it'll help you with your vitamin D. Awesome. You could also, like, if you've ever seen the sun come in before through like a window and you look at it, you can actually see its rays as it's coming in. Beautiful. And so you can see the sun, you can play in the sun, it can show up as vitamin D on your skin, or you could get solar panels and you could power a whole house or a whole city, right? So you can use this energy in a variety of different ways. Now, a lot of times what happens is when it comes to the energy of the body, you have to understand how to use it. So I've seen people before who've spent like 10 years trying to figure out how to just see energy. but not understand how to use energy to change their life. And so unfortunately, their health is broken. They have a lot of trauma and emotional patterns or negativity or hurt. And they have all these things going on. And yet they're going, but I just want to see energy, and I just want to play with energy, and I just want to feel energy. And just like, with the sun, we can feel the energy of the sun warm on our skin, and it's beautiful. But there's a difference if we're going to be powering a city with it. And similarly, when we think about healing ourselves or changing our lives, a lot of times, people are wanting to send energy and receive energy and all of that. But the life-changing energy is inside of all of us. And it really has to do with those emotional patterns that are at a deeper level. And if you think about, the woman who unfortunately with the abusive father who leaves him and finds abusive boyfriend, boss, spouse, etc., when you look at what does she really want? Well, consciously, she's saying, I just want somebody to love me. I just want to be loved. I want a nice guy. And that's not what she's getting. And that's because we really need to understand that the conscious mind only controls, up to 5%. And whereas the subconscious mind controls 90 to 95%. So the conscious mind, 5 to 10% is definitely the smaller part of it. And it's like thinking about, 5 to 10 people against 90 to 95 people, and who's going to win. And when we start to think about our energy like that, it's like to win the game of energy and to win the, life and create real change, we've got to get that information in the subconscious mind, in that energy. And that's when it becomes life-changing. And so, yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you, as you're talking about patterns and you use the example of the woman in the abusive relationships also, it's what do you experience in the clients that you work with and really just witnessing what's going on in the world? How many of us are still trying to break through something that it's still part of a trauma pattern rather than a pattern that's more obvious? And how is that affecting us being able to shift if you think that the trauma is still running tremendously in the background for a lot of people? And how's that affecting our ability of our desire, really wanting to break the habit to elevate our entire life?
Absolutely. So I love the question, and there's a few pieces that you really touched on that are very important. And I want to say number one is we're talking about tricky patterns today, how patterns can be very tricky. And okay, so a few things. So I want to speak to this because let's be honest. Okay. Some women who have an abusive father don't recreate the pattern. Others do. And, interestingly, and I'll give you one example that I've seen, and it can show up in a variety of different ways. But one example is that the woman as a kid can have a dad who, has a temper, and then he lashes out, he gets upset, he abuses her. Then what happens is that in some cases I'll see where then he feels bad. And then he goes, oh my God, I love you so much. I'm so sorry. I love you. Let's go buy you a toy. Let's go take care of you. Let me go get you something, or, I love you so much. And he wants to make up. Now, what happens in that case is love gets linked to the abuse. And so that's where it becomes more tricky, is because ultimately it's not just cut and dry, as if you simplify and oversimplify the mind, if you think about pain and pleasure, that other things get linked up. And then that's where the pattern becomes tricky, is because it's easier to then release some type of trauma when it's by itself. But then when you connect it with a lot of other factors, then trying to get rid of it feels really hard, because then you go to try to get rid of the hurt, but then it's connected to love, or then it's connected to, different pieces in the brain. And so you'll feel like you've gotten rid of it, but there it shows up again. And it's because of those pieces. And the other thing is that, another example of tricky mind programming is if you think about, for example, if you've heard before of, unfortunately, the cutter, somebody who cuts themselves. and they can experience this feeling of euphoria or relief even from cutting themselves. Now, of course, that doesn't make logical sense, but the emotion gets linked up. And so what can happen is we can have the most counterintuitive links that get linked up to information and experiences in the subconscious mind that then make them continue to attract over and over again. And then what happens is that because they end up in the subconscious mind. And the other tricky part of that is that they show up in different ways. So it's kind of like this, is like all the time I've seen this happen where, if it's the abusive dad, then if somebody had like where they had another abusive dad, obviously you'd be able to see the pattern. But it's not always that clear. So then you feel like you have like kind of, for example, a woman who I worked with who actually had this very situation, had then the boss that felt like abused her, and then the husband that felt like abused her. And so she had this experience over and over in a variety of different ways. And then on top of that, then ended up having a son. So like basically she got to a point where she said, look, I'm done with men. I'm done with, that's it, no more. And then like 2 months later, her son was diagnosed bipolar and started beating her. And so it was like, and of course, first and foremost, she's just thinking about her son and you can't get rid of him, but she didn't even see that there was a pattern. For her, she was living in life going, oh my God, I've had, my father, and she didn't see it. So then she grows up and she's got like, this boss is just mean to me, and he's doing this and blah, 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 and this, and I'm done with men. And then she goes, as a mother going, God, and my poor son, he's bipolar and I have all these things and he hits me. Blah, blah. She had no idea they were all connected to the same feeling pattern. And so another reason they can be tricky is just because you don't always realize that there's a pattern. And so that's ultimately, it's identifying what the patterns are, understanding why they're stuck, and then transforming them.
Do you really have to get to a point of understanding where the patterns emanate from in order to shift them, or do you help your clients in a different way with that?
Ultimately, a lot of times it does require understanding that it's a pattern. And part of the reason that is because you can also find empowerment in it. And there's something that I call, it's basically what I call emotional controlled consciousness. So ECC. And what happens is that our emotions that we feel control our consciousness, control what we see. And a simple example is if you think about, if you've ever thought about buying a certain car and you start seeing it everywhere, or another example that's a better example would be if you are crazy in love with somebody, you're so in love with them and you see all the wonderful good things in them. It's like they could have red flags. And if there are red flags, you just dance to them. You're like, hey, it's a party, right? You don't even really notice the red flags. But if you're angry at the person and you're so frustrated, you don't even see the good. You're like, they left their socks on the floor. It's like every freaking thing they do is annoying or blah, 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 or whatever, right? And you see that and you feel that. And you can't see the good in them at that point. Even if they do something nice, you're like, yeah, thanks for the flowers, right? It's just, they're just annoying you with every little thing. And you try to and so it's just that feeling. Now, my point is that you'll start to see differently in them, and your emotions control your consciousness. And so I've had people say before, all men cheat or all men are abusive, which I can take another woman says, all men are so great. They just treat me wonderfully. They blah, 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 like a completely different story. And so point being is that the emotions that we have can control our consciousness. So we actually believe something. So it's like you believe. Another great and unfortunate example is I'll use this, and you'll be able to see even more clearly, is let's take a moment to just kind of like speculate with Steve Jobs for a moment. And if you think about him, he was pescatarian, vegetarian, was meditating all the time, even went to ashram in India. I mean, he was very much into meditation. And of course, unfortunately, he didn't heal himself, but if you look at why, see, and you can speculate even from if you've ever seen a documentary on him before. So if you've seen a documentary, you'll know that he was kind of known for being mean to people, treating them really horribly, and also taking people's ideas and taking credit for them. So he's got, like, if you look at Steve Jobs taking credit for people's ideas, you'll see a lot of information that comes out because people felt upset. And you'll see that, and we can just speculate on that from documentaries and all that, but there's a lot of information about things like that. And I would say there's a lot of great, they just wasn't perfect. But my point is this, is if you think about, if you're familiar with his story, he had been kicked out of his company. You know, he was removed from Apple, and you can see why they didn't want him there. So I understand that. And he had a victim feeling of, you know, feeling like a victim, kicked out of his own company. But if you look at it from the other side, was he the victim, or was he the one that was treating people poorly and being mean to people? And so if you look at the other consciousness, so why in his head, you know, I would assume based on story and all of that, you know, you look at his victim side of it all, but then you look at the other side and you can see that there's a whole nother side. And point being is just that our brains can get sucked into a consciousness, like a victim consciousness, or a trauma consciousness, or like all men are abusive, or all men cheat, or all men are like a consciousness, or like even regarding money or success or whatever it is. And so what happens is that you asked about, you know, do we really need to identify these patterns to be able to change them? And optimally, yeah, if you can identify an emotion and then you start changing that and transforming that. So you want to, especially if you want to get a real result with healing, with changing your life, you want to be specific. And that's how I've shown people how to get radical results, is, you know, with everything from success to relationships to, you know, I've had people that I've worked with, plenty of people who felt unloved and like they were never going to get married, and who are now married or now engaged, or, you know, just, and so targeting the specific emotion is the way to radically shortcut the process. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And again, I love the way that you approach it also. And part of your special offer, and we'll get into it in a little bit, it's about really going into these traumatic imprints. And
yeah, you know, real quick on that note, I could share a very silly exercise. It's silly, but it's profound. Yeah, so let's do this. So again, it's ridiculous and it's silly, but afterwards I'll explain why it's profound. Okay, so come with me for a moment. All right, so I'm going to ask everybody just for a moment. I'm going to ask you guys to just for a moment to breathe and to close your eyes. And I want to invite you guys just for a moment to picture that somebody you love is making you your favorite meal ever. They're making you your favorite meal. And notice what it smells like and what it feels like. And just notice what feeling comes up for you. Notice what feeling comes up for you. And I'm going to ask you guys, does anybody want to type in the chat what feeling came up for you? What feeling came up for you? What feeling? There we go. I love that. Jordan says gratitude. Love that, Jordan. Love that. Gratitude, right? There we go. Comfort. I love that. Karen says comfort. Beautiful. And so notice it feels good. I love that. There we go. Barbara says loved, care. Susan says comfort, cared for. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So the next part, I'm going to ask you guys just for a moment to breathe. And I'm going to ask you to just clear that from your mind, clear that completely, delete, clear that from your mind. And I'm going to ask you to breathe. And I want you to picture just for a moment that you have in your hand a silver spoon, a perfect silver spoon in your hand. And I'm going to ask you to picture that you take that silver spoon and you take a big scoop of doggy poo and you bring it close to your mouth to eat it and you smell it. What comes up for you? And delete, delete, delete. And I'm going to tell you, again, it's profound. I know it's ridiculous, but wait, where we're going for this. But what comes up for you? What emotion comes up? There we go. There we go. Jordan says disgust, LOL, gag, laughter. Barbara, I love that. So just for a moment. Okay, so here we go. And this is why it's profound. And then there's several reasons. Okay. And I know it's ridiculous and silly and delete, 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 yummy, wonderful things, smelling the roses. All right. But again, ridiculous. But number one, you can see how an emotion in your head can cause you to gag, physical response to an emotion that's just in your head. Nothing actually happened. So that's number one. Number two is this, is that if you meditate for 10,000 hours, do you think you're going to clear that programming away? No, you're not going to. It's still going to be there. And I can tell you, because during my injury, I tried meditating for 10,000 hours and I still didn't heal. And I also still have that programming where every time I even say that test, like that thing, that exercise, makes me want to gag. Okay, so it didn't clear from my head. Now, number three is this, is that a lot of people think, oh, well, we were born with that. But if you've ever changed a diaper on a baby, you will notice you have to pin down their hands. They are sneaky. And they will try to get in the diaper and play with anything and everything they can. Or if you've ever seen them go to the bathroom in the bathtub, you know what I'm talking about. They will play with whatever. They don't have the ew, gross, gag. Ugh, they don't have that yet. Instead, your mom was like, ew, gross, nasty when you're eating dirt or in the cat litter box or whatever else, right? And so this was all programmed in. And so what happens all the time is that a lot of times, you know, people are trying to meditate or just think positive or trying to lift. But what happens if instead of ew, disgusting, gross, you have trauma that's in there? You have hurt, you have left out or a rejection or abuse or abandonment or just even feeling not good enough or not loved, whatever it is, wounding towards success, wounding towards relationship, whatever it is. You can meditate till the cows come home and it's not going to target that specific thing. Now, what it could do, and I'm not a big fan of meditation for this reason, but or just in general, because there's a lot of reasons we can go. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But very simply, I did that for years and years and years and years and years. And while it made me feel more relaxed, and sometimes I could feel a little better, it didn't heal me. And so what I do with people to get radical results in life is I help them to identify the specific things and understand why it's stuck there and then shift. Now, don't get me wrong, this whole thing, you want to keep this here, like doggy poop, don't eat it, gag. And I love that. I love that. Karen says, outstanding example. I can see that. Bingo. And that's why I say, guys, it's profound and it's ridiculous and it's still profound. So that is, like, if you think about programming in your mind, that's the stuff. And you want to, again, keep that one, it's good. But other things, you want to radically shift those. And when you do, that's when you can get incredible results with your life. And so that's why when I said, you know, when I was trying to get better and all of that stuff, I was sending energy and thinking positive and visualizing myself and, you know, doing everything that, and gratitude, always grateful for life and affirmations and all these things, but it didn't work. And that's when I said, okay, I've got to understand this. And so that's when I really began to understand the mind and to pinpoint things. And that's what creates radical shifts. So that's the silly, simple exercise.
It's a profound exercise, and the simplicity of it actually draws us into being able to play with it. It doesn't have to be so elaborate. So I find it profound and so just highly intelligent. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's wonderful. There's a question I want to ask you, but I want to save it at the end because this is a big picture type of thing, but it's so important. And I want to kind of dive our way or work our way into it. So what I'd like to do, since we're about 3/4 into the show already, let's go into your special offer, because this is really special to have this time with you. And to go into really healing the tricky patterns and trauma is what you're offering here. I think it's so important on a conscious subconscious level what we're showing up for and what's possible, because we don't have to be stuck regurgitating the same energy over and over and over again, not knowing how to get out, trying all these different things like meditation, which I think serve to re-imprint the same patterns over and over. But that's again another conversation if you're using it for that intent. But what you've put together for us, it's phenomenal. Everybody, it's on the call, listening on the replay. The link is in the chat box. If you open up the chat box, go all the way to the bottom of the chat and click on the link that April has typed in there for us. Or if you like, you can open up a new browser and type in the following: beyondtheordinaryshow.com/Brandy27. And that'll take you to that same elevate your happiness, energy, and your entire life, healing tricky patterns and trauma page. And Brandy, guide everybody through how they're going to be able to interact with you in this course.
Absolutely. So this course, and I have to say, okay, so when John asked me to come on, I always am like, all right, I love you guys and I love this audience. And so it was like, this is a class that honestly, like, it's awesome. And it's not something that I typically would do. Typically I'm doing this with VIP clients or, or people that I'm working with one-on-one, where we're identifying tricky patterns and then transforming them. So I am going to say this class is limited, but basically that's what it is that I have seen so often before where people are wanting to make a change and there's some type of tricky pattern that they can't identify that's holding them back. And so basically it is 4 weeks of live calls. So we have one call a week and we get on it. And basically what we do is I'll help you to identify. So one class is going to be exactly that. It's going to be identifying those tricky patterns and then also identifying why they're stuck and identifying that and then just transforming them. So you're going to have tools and techniques to help you to transform negative energy. And also on certain ones, we'll go through kind of like we are on Zoom, but it'll be like, okay, look, let's identify this. And I'll kind of just run through everybody's energy. We'll have something to work on and we'll do that. So that is it. And then there is a bonus of uplift calls, which is basically, I do these mind programming calls where it's uplifters from around the world. And basically it is creating so much positive energy and programming it into the neural pathways. And so basically it's mind programming calls. And what you do is there's an extra one, additional one every week that you can jump on. So there's the actual call where we're working, we're transforming, we're learning tools and techniques. And then there is a 15-20 minute community uplift call that's just about putting in positive programming because making that transformation is so important. So that is the class. And I got to be on it. Like it's honestly, if you're somebody who has been stuck in any area, my biggest suggestion is sign up because this is probably, this is a special class. We'll put it that way. Not something I normally run. So
it's a very special class. And I'm scrolling down the page. I love that you have Zena's testimonial on here. A lot of y'all probably don't know who Zena is. She is a badass entrepreneur, beautiful heart, spirit, and just amazing. And her testimonials where she healed her tumor and she credits, she was going into surgery. And I think she found out that same day that the tumors are shrunk and the surgeons canceled, right? Something like that.
Completely gone. So, so what she had done is, it was beautiful how it unfolded. But Zena is somebody that we both know, and like just a beautiful, beautiful being. And so she'd had a tumor in her throat, and it was there for like months. But I hadn't talked to her. John hadn't talked to her. I don't believe during that time, and so she was trying, a lot of energy stuff and meditations and food and all this stuff. Couldn't get it gone, and finally was like had to have surgery to get it, was going to have surgery to get it removed. So she had a pre-op appointment and they did an MRI again, and it was 5 millimeters. And literally her and I connected the day before surgery. So she'd already had the MRI, the next MRI to make the size and all that stuff. And the day before surgery, her and I happened to connect, and we worked for an hour and 15 minutes. And she showed up for surgery the next day, and she was like, I don't think it's there. And they're like, no, it's there. And then the ENT, he went to go operate, and he was like, it's gone. And he's like, I can't operate on something that's not there. And he's like, he'd never seen anything like that in his 30 years of working. And so it's beautiful. And I have to say, she did it. I coached her. I helped her to identify what was there. I helped her to release it. I helped her to shift her energy. She's like, she's amazing. And she was like, all right, I'm going to embody the change. So I always want to tell people, like, this is not a magic potion. It is not just send energy and blah, 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 or, even unfortunately, like using the example of Steve Jobs, where he's meditating, but he's not really changing. And so, and much respect to him, but point being is this, that it does take real change, and it takes follow through, and she did it. But the things that I see all of the time with people, life, health, success, everything, it's just really, really incredible. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
Well, and I want to give everyone in the audience, I want to give you guys some perspective of my awareness of the type of clients that Brandy works with. We're talking high level executives, multi-high millionaires that are expanding between building their business from 20 million going up to 50 million. She's worked with some high level coaches.
Right now it's 300 million.
Oh, sorry. It's been a while since we've spoken. Yes. But it's amazing. There's another high level coach who's in a pattern of relationships that weren't working or not finding it. And not only does she find this amazing partnership, and I've seen her story through social posts and that she's about to have a baby also. And I know some of her story, and I know that you assisted her in finding herself through that. I won't say that you cleared it for her, because I know you don't want that type of adoration necessarily, but you really did. You provided a framework and a field of potential that can be accessed beyond the trauma and beyond the belief system that was in place to expand what was available.
Isn't it beautiful that she's going to have a baby?
It's so amazing. And she influences so many people around the world. It's amazing. And again, these are the type of people that Brandy works with. I worked with Brandy for months, quite a while back. It may have been for close to a year. I forget now, but it was so profound.
It is. By the way, I want to answer a question right here, if that's okay. Somebody said, would this class be helpful for trauma from mental illness diagnosis 10 years ago? Been a pattern that's been stuck for a long time. And the answer is yes. Yes, that's the goal. Is that, like John was saying, it's, I work with a lot of high level people and all of that. And that's just what's possible. And it's fine. It's available for all of us to heal, to create change. And I do want to say, it's not a magic potion. Like, I show people how to get radical results, and you got to show up and you follow through, and it's life-changing. And so yeah, just go ahead. I just wanted to answer that. So yeah.
No, I'm so glad you answered that. And again, my whole point being of revealing that and shining that to our audiences, this is a way to access Brandy at this price point and what's being shown to you. And again, apply yourselves and just commit yourselves to it, and just know that this isn't just hopefully something will shift, or I'm going to try another program to, well, maybe this might work. It's like, no, you're going to be called up and out, and it's going to be beautiful, because Brandy won't just hold you accountable. She holds herself accountable as well. And it's so beautiful, but in the most loving, beautiful, expansive way. So again, I can't say enough about this. It's generous to be able to have these calls with you at this price point, or at any price point like this, Brandy. And I would encourage all of y'all to take advantage of it. And again, to do so, just click on the link that's in the chat box, or go to beyondtheordinaryshow.com/Brandy27. And the 4 live Zoom calls plus the bone, it's $147. Again, y'all take advantage of it. You will be so happy that you did. You're going to be empowered in such a way that adds to what you've done and grounds it in, and you will be able to see what else is possible from there. So wonderful energy on here, Brandy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And Brandy, I'd like to open up to some Q&A if you're open to it.
John, you've got the floor. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Let's go in then. Let's see. I'm promoting some of y'all to panelists here. My Zoom's acting a little slow today. But as I go in here, let me go into a question that came into the chat. Um, for trauma from mental illness. Karen writes, I trained as a body code practitioner in locating energy blocks, but knew that there was something more, and this is it. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Karen, for that. And there's a question that came in from Elaine. Elaine wants to know if you can speak about the phrase belief that there are no accidents. She has a history of accidents, and she knows of your accidents causing you so much pain, and wondering what your perspective is around what's been imprinted through these things.
Absolutely. And yeah, there are no accidents. And you know, I was just working with somebody the other day who had a bad accident, and that was something we were looking at. She's like, why did this happen? And there was something, and we'll just say, without sharing a bunch of her information, we'll just say that there was something very upsetting that had happened. And so a lot of times what you won't realize is that there can be something like, for example, let me give you a better example. Another guy that I worked with, he was at a point where he felt like he was supposed to be given a home loan for something, and it didn't go through. And he was so angry. He was just pissed. And he felt like his world was falling apart. And basically he got in an accident and he had a lot of broken bones. I mean, I don't even know how many broken bones. It was a lot. And everything happens for a reason. With me, in my situation, I had a car accident. I also had a fall. And interestingly, what had happened is I felt like I had fallen in life, like nothing was there for me. And it was because prior to my injury, I mentioned I did network engineering and operations. Well, I worked on the West Coast, so I'm here in California, and I would work with coworkers. So my work schedule was 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., which means that I worked on the East Coast a lot in the morning, where I was working with a lot of people, and that put me in the office during 9/11. And so when 9/11 happened, I had a bunch of coworkers that were in there that I was on the phone with, that and all this stuff and yada, yada, yada. I won't go into all the details, but in that moment, the only person I was worried about was them, you know, but there was a lot of things that went into my mind where I was watching it on TV at the same time. And then I was hearing them in the phone and yada, 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 you know, I don't want to spread a bunch of blah, but there was all of these things that happened simultaneously. And then, you know, if you remember, like there was red, orange, like emergency levels after that. And all of that went into my mind, because when I did network engineering and operations communication, I was surrounded by TV. So all of this information went in my subconscious mind, and I didn't even realize it. And then I just felt like I fell, like it was just like my foundations were broken of what happened, and that was inside of me, but I didn't realize it. I kind of, to give you also an idea, I'm in the Hall of Fame for martial arts. So that's how I grew up also. And so that's like, I just was always, and then, by the way, it's nothing like this UFC stuff where I never had to hurt anybody. It was points, you know, it was different than that. But to give you an example, like I had always been somebody who's very, very strong. And so at that point, it was like, I felt like I fell inside, and that also manifested in my life. And so I would say that I see it always happen for a variety of different reasons. I've seen it, somebody cheating on their spouse before, and it's like, oh, they felt like they deserved a lot of punishment. I mean, there's always something. And I would definitely say everything happens for a reason. But the beautiful thing is when we look at it and we really transform it, it becomes life-changing. So.
How do we get away from the place of judging and blaming ourselves for those accidents? Because that's a big component that comes up, especially when there's repetitive patterns. We start going, well, there must be something wrong with me. Is it a repeated pattern? Yes. Is there something wrong with us? I think there's a different conversation around that doesn't have to get into the persecution.
This is what I think, is that if you're here, you're an old soul. And I would say that most patterns that I've seen with people have been going on for lifetimes. 20 lifetimes, and whatever your beliefs are about lifetimes. But either way, another way to put it is this, is a lot of these patterns have happened, started in, even what happens is from past lifetimes, whether you're somebody who believes in that or not. But even if we look at childhood, like a lot of these patterns that people have are even starting in childhood, right? Which they come from past lifetimes, but we'll just simplify it and say even just childhood. And if you think about it, if I told you I have a pattern of feeling like, I worked with a woman the other day, we'll use her example. She had a pattern of feeling really upset for not getting her way when she was 3 years old. When you stop and look at it and you go, wait a second, she's had this pattern, it's consumed her consciousness. And you just come with compassion. You say, you know what, I get it, because you realize that it's somebody's consciousness. And so I would say, really, instead of being critical or judgmental of yourself, be proud of yourself for waking up and even seeing it, because consciousness is a huge part. So the last thing you want to do is beat yourself up. Instead, get excited. Go, oh my God, I see the pattern and now I can change it. And so the last thing you want to do is start beating yourself up. You want to acknowledge yourself for seeing it, acknowledge your awareness, and get excited about really changing it, because it's life-changing.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like playing chess. If any one of y'all know how to play chess, and you can see like 7 moves ahead, it's like, oh, that's why I'm going to checkmate. And so you actually get excited before that last move, because you can already see the pattern, how it's shifting, and it's getting you to that spot. And if we can be in that,
game on. Next time you're in LA, we're playing chess.
awesome. Okay. Oh, I won't share the result. It's okay. It's
what's that?
I say, all right. Anyway, I won't get into it, but it's yes, and it'll be fun. And
yeah, the first time John came to LA and we caught up for a meal, and literally we were there talking for like 4 hours. So we can talk forever. We were just, yeah, so it was funny. And then the waitress thought we were dating or something. We're like, no, we're just very consumed in our conversation. So anyway, so,
so beautiful.
But and Donna said, just for a moment, she says, it says the package is focused on sexual trauma. It actually has, like, if you've ever heard before of, and maybe you've heard this, where somebody can go through a type of trauma, even a sexual trauma, and end up blaming themselves. And so when you're blaming yourself, it doesn't make logical sense. And so it's not based on, that's just counterintuitive patterns. So tricky patterns is really what we're talking about. But maybe you know that is just that trauma patterns can be tricky, and especially sexual trauma can also be tricky. And so it's really just one type of tricky pattern. So
yeah, I love that you brought that up, Donna. And again, it's so much more that's available. Brandy, let's go to another live caller. I'm guided to go to Karen. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
I haven't been on in a while. I've been processing everything I learn on your shows and taking it all in.
Me too.
It's wonderful. I love it. I'm super excited I jumped on tonight because so I am a body code practitioner years ago, which was kind of got my journey started originally. And so I'm extremely sensitive to energy in myself and other people in the world and the wind, everything. And so, but I felt like there was a missing component, because I hear people say, meditate, meditate. And I'm like, I get all that, but that's not removing the blocks. So I'm extremely excited and fascinated to hear what Brandy's saying. And I'm wondering if she's familiar with body and emotion code practitioners. It's through Dr. Bradley Nelson. But it sounds to me like this is definitely something that can take my practice to the next level. And especially I resonate with her remark about the ancestral lineage. It's taken me 56 years to figure that out and get through that. And I want to be able to help other people because I can communicate back that far. I want to be able to remove those blocks in energy back that far. So I'm super excited. So I just wanted to see what she had to say about it.
I would say that Bingo. I would say I have not gone through the body code course. I would say all the time I get people who come into my course who have been there and who haven't been able to heal. So I would say who have gotten results. So I would say that yes, it's complementary. I would say as far as this course though, that I am doing, it's not really like a practitioner one. It's really about people who are like wanting help, who are stuck, and that's what it is. So I don't know that it's the right answer for you necessarily, because I would say it's really, I think that the reason I did this is I thought, what will serve people the most, and it's just really about that. Is I would love to see more people happy,
Right.
getting
Right.
but yeah. So yes. Yes. And so that's what I would say is that's the goal of it. So I don't know that it's a practitioner. It's not really a practitioner, but yes.
And the yes and Brandy though, Karen, as you were speaking, it's like you were speaking about helping others, but I kept getting helping you.
Me.
Like,
it's me.
Intuitively over and over again.
Absolutely.
I kept hearing, no, you're healing
Yeah.
users. There's another layer that
Woo.
that you have access to.
Yeah.
That it's almost like it's time. It's like you're ready, and this happens to show up at this time.
Wow.
To
John,
be
I'm covered in chills. I am covered in chills. You are 100% spot on, because the one thing that has held me back all these years, until I heal myself, I can't heal somebody else. I have to heal myself first. And once I'm able to do that, that gives me the confidence and the confidence to know that then I can go on, because other people are drawn to me. They're there, but I won't take that step because I've been working on me. So there's definitely stuff that I need help with. You're so spot on. I mean, you just nailed me like 100%.
It's like Brandy said, it's yes and. And again, as you walk forward, you become a beacon for what's possible just through what you emanate. And we'll get into my question in a little bit, Brandy, because I think it's a big component that we haven't pulled the lid off yet. But we're going.
What is this big question? I'm gonna wait, but it's coming.
Is it a big question, or is it a reveal that some of y'all are going to go, well, of course, but until the door is shown, it's like, oh, but we forgot about it, or I wasn't thinking about that. And I believe it provides just another expansionary tool that's, when applied, can just create huge shifts. And Brandy is so honed in on it. So I love that you asked us, Karen, and I recommend you working with Brandy highly.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for coming on. All right. Melanie's asking if you've had much success helping people with eating issues. I already know the answer, but I want you to answer it.
Yes, absolutely. All types of eating issues, from anorexia to bulimia to overeating. So yeah, everything is, it's like the DS test, if you will, with the DS mind exercise, the dog stuff exercise. Everything is programmed in the subconscious mind. So yes, I've worked with several people.
Wonderful. All right, Barbara, let's go to you now. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted Brandy to know she's actually one of my favorite people on the earth. I'm sorry?
I said me too.
Oh, I've done a couple of her classes, and she was able to feel into my energy and find a pattern from when I was 6, from when a nun convinced me that I had to be a good girl, and it gave me a lot of pressure. And just working with that knowledge has made big changes. I put in the positive. I'm still working on the releasing, but then I did her money program too, and did a 180 shift, and boom, within no time, I was really doing well financially. So I just highly recommend that you work with her, because she's ridiculously amazing.
You're so great. My heart receives that, and you're amazing. You're ridiculously amazing, honey. Great.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have a question for Brandy while we've got you on here?
You know, well, I was on another presentation she gave today, and she was talking about biophotons. But then I actually wrote it down. Then you said something about the missing neurons cause disease, but the biophotons, I was just wondering, do they counteract that? It's all energy and light. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
What we were talking about was actually, which I'm going to confuse a lot of people right now. So let's say, we'll just simplify it and just say, if you look at free radically damaged cells are missing an electron. So it wasn't neurons that were missing, is electrons. And we were talking about how energy can actually affect, and like if you think about electrons and you think about the energy of the body and the awareness that the body's made up of atoms, which are protons, neutrons, electrons, all of that. So yeah, so I don't think we have enough time to take everybody down that rabbit hole, but yes. So basically, very simply, if you think about how can the mind affect the physical body, because that was something that I had, like, I have an accident, I have physical injuries. How is my mind going to heal my physical body? And when you start to look at it, the body is made of atoms and molecules. Like we are not so physical. And so that was just talking about how is it possible for energy to impact physical parts of the body. And so yes. So does that answer your question? So it wasn't about neurons missing. It was more about the
electrons. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.
Brandy, what can you tell me about the resilience of our body, of our energy, of all that? Because again, we got into this conversation on a call yesterday. And again, so many people approach their healing with such fragility. They think that they are such fragile beings. And I'm like, no, you're quite the opposite. It's only the belief that you're fragile that keeps us from moving forward in fear, because something tells us we might break.
Yes. So as far as being fragile goes, I would say, honestly, I would say that a lot of times if somebody feels fragile, there is the belief that there's fragile, or there's even subconsciously, again, the mind is tricky. And this is actually goes to the same thing, kind of like this. Okay. So the best example of this is that I've worked with people before who have, like, they're worriers, so to speak. So if you think about it, like, their brain is always picturing the worst thing happening. Now, all the time people say, well, just stop worrying or think positive. But there's always something else going on. For example, a person that I worked with, and this had a pattern of feeling very guilty in life. So felt guilty, felt bad about things. Now, if you feel guilty or bad, then you feel like you deserve punishment. And so what happened is that then the mind is always wanting to picture punishing things happen. This bad thing, that bad thing, that bad thing, an accident, this, that, or the other. And it's not. And then people say, well, just stop worrying, or just meditate, or just check out. Well, no, what this person really needed to do was change their pattern of self-punishment and feeling guilty. And so that's what changed. And when that changed, it changed everything. Now, a lot of times what can happen is subconsciously a person can feel like they deserve punishment, or they deserve more injury, like, oh, well, you're not going to be healthy, you're going to have more sickness. And then they feel fragile because it's something else that's reflecting in the mind. So I would say, yes, you're like spot on. Of course, absolutely. We are so resilient. We are so strong. And if for some reason a person has that feeling, that there's always some type of subconscious link that is hooked onto it.
Thank you for that. And it's important to know that, because we can start to, again, I asked that question for everybody here on the call because if there's a fear or some type of tentative energy that comes up because nothing has worked before, it seems insurmountable, or you just feel like you've done so much that you just can't take any more.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Is this, we are strong, incredible human beings. We're resilient.
Diane W writes, she says she's curious about the pattern of grief. It feels like a wet blanket on her body.
Bingo. Bingo. Give me 1 second. Bingo. 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 Diane, there's a feeling like you would feel guilty if you were happy, and that if everything was great. Can you see that by chance? So it's kind of in the subconscious mind. So maybe you can, or maybe you can't, but there's this, yes, love your awareness. And so that's what happens is that, so if somebody's going through a lot of grief, sometimes it's like, oh, if I be happy, if like, even, you know, a lot of people experience grief from losing a spouse or losing a partner, somebody, you know, like somebody, let's say something bad happens to somebody or something. And then it's like, well, oh, can I be happy? Can I enjoy life? Oh, I can't do that. And so what happens is this blanket of grief, which you explained, you illustrated so well, as it does. It feels like a blanket of grief. It just feels like a wet, heavy blanket. Is exactly that. And it's because it would be bad, or it's linked up in the brain that it would be bad to be happy, to be loving life. And then so the more somebody tries to be happy and love life, a lot of times it backfires, and it just, oh, this problem or that problem or this heaviness or that. There we go. Tears. I don't deserve to be happy. Yeah, I feel you, honey. I feel you. That's the tricky part. I feel you. I feel you. I get it. And that's what you're going to want to change. You definitely do deserve to be happy.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for writing in. I love your vulnerability and your strength in the question as well.
Yeah, there's another question here that I think is a really good question.
Go ahead, yeah.
Susan says, is our pain sometimes just, I slept funny and I'm sore today? Or is it always our body is telling us something? Woke up with a sore pelvis after falling asleep on the couch. Is my body maybe saying more? Like I should be getting up and moving more? No, it's always, there's always some type of emotion or something that is there. And you know, that's what you'll want to do, is you'll want to look at that. Bingo. And I'm wondering, so it's let me see. I see it. I'm just not sure if I should say it. Bingo. If I ask you, Susan, if I ask you how many people you take care of, or kids that you have, how many would you say that? How many? It feels like kids or somebody you're taking care of. Bingo. There we go. Bingo. And so there was a bit of stress towards one of your kids. Can you see that? Bingo. Great self-awareness. Very, very, very impressive. So that's what it has to do with, is exactly that. And so, so I love your question. Great awareness. And that's what you want to change.
Wonderful. April put in the link for Brandy's offer again. It's going down into those tricky patterns, going down into healing that trauma, really changing your energy. The link's in the chat box. You can get to it again by going to beyondtheordinaryshow.com/Brandy27. And again, I highly recommend this. 4 live courses, the bonus call, full on Brandy, and just empowerment in such a beautiful way. So again, highly recommend it. Brandy, I want to take some more calls, but I'm going to get into the questions, so I won't be quite so mysterious.
Your mysteriousness, John.
My mysteriousness, it adds to my allure. What can I say? Or at least I think so. That's all that matters.
I think it does too. Not that you need any more addition to it. I mean, nailed that.
Oh my goodness. But Brandy, really what I want to get into here is our core energy. Talk about our core energy and why it's so important.
Absolutely. And basically what you'll want to look at is this, is that, you know, when we think a thought, you know, we talk about neurons firing. When we think a thought, we have transmission energy. So basically it's like you think about something and it emits energy. Now, when you get it in your subconscious mind, it's even in your energy while you're sleeping. It's like kind of like the DS, the doggy stuff test that we did. Notice that's been there forever. And notice part of the reason that I use that is because nobody came to this call thinking about that. And nobody has thought about that in at least the last 10 years, if not 40 years, you know, or a long time. But point being is that you're not even thinking about it. And so that right there, like if there's a trauma there, if there's love there on the positive note, whenever you get stuff that's programmed into your subconscious mind, it's easy. And so sometimes people, will say it's kind of like this. When you get information programmed into your subconscious mind, everything is easier because then it's part of your being. But where the work is actually reprogramming your subconscious mind, understanding how to do it. But that's when it's in your core energy. And that's the energy that you're not thinking about all the time because it's there. And it's just like in the very beginning when John said, how are you so happy all the time? And I said, because it's programmed in. And so it's just like the DS test, but much different. It's happiness instead of that feeling. But that's what your core energy is exactly that. It's the energy that emanates in your core. And that's the energy that is important for changing your health, changing your life.
Yeah. And for me, I would even use the analogy of changing out the motor in your car. If you were running a Ford before and you get to upgrade to a Mercedes, why wouldn't you?
Right.
Why wouldn't you? And it's like, how do you run more smoothly? How do you get more miles? How do you, accelerate so fast and have it with that type of, engineering that's accessible, that we have the technology to. And that's what happens when we shift our core energy. Also, it just becomes automatic. We don't have to keep reaching down to fix something, to upgrade it. It just is. That becomes your operating system.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well said.
So that's what leads. So beautiful. So thank you for that explanation. And again, it's everybody on the call, again, on the replay. This is about accessing these tools, these frameworks, this operating system that you already have within you. We're cleaning it up. We're getting into a place where you actually realize that you can play with these other cylinders that are available in your system, because something has been in there that hasn't let you shift out a second gear for whatever reason, and you've got 5 other gears to go.
Exactly. On this note, there's something else I'd love to just share with anybody, just on your journey. Something you'll want to keep in mind is actually, and it's meditation can actually make it harder to change. And this is why. We're talking about identifying tricky patterns and changing them, right? Targeting that specific thing and changing it. Now, if you think about it for a moment, let's say that somebody's here and they're meditating. Let's say somebody is meditating. What are they doing? Like if you think about silent meditation, a lot of times if we look at silent meditation first, basically, let's say you're sitting here and a thought comes up and you gently release it. And a thought comes up and you gently release it. And a thought comes up and you just don't pay attention to it, right? Now, if you think about it, if there's 2 people sitting there doing that, thought comes up and they release it, thought comes up and they release it, they're having 2 different thoughts come up. One person is one thing, another person is another thing. What are they really doing? Well, what they're really doing is they're training their brain to not pay attention what's in their subconscious mind. Something comes up and they ignore it. Something comes up and they ignore it. Now, the problem with this is a few things. First and foremost, what you want to do, and everything that we're talking about, is identifying what's in your subconscious mind and then shifting it. So if you think about it, if you're training your brain to ignore what's in your subconscious mind, you're not helping yourself. Now, of course, there's, you've probably seen studies where it's like meditation is helpful. Well, the way that it's helpful is that, if somebody's upset or angry and they start programming in the feeling of calm, well, that's going to be great that they're feeling more calm. That's a benefit over being angry. But if you're somebody who's really working on mastering your mind, it's not a benefit, because now you're hindering yourself from being able to see. And if we build on this for a moment, if you've ever done this before, where, let's say, kind of shifting gears for a moment, and I'll bring you full circle, but if you've ever done this before where you were driving somewhere and you get to your destination and you realize you're like, oh my God, did I stop on at all the lights or all the stop signs on the way here? Because you realize you kind of checked out a little bit. Or even if you think about that example, you can see how our minds start to do things automatically. Or even tying your shoes. You don't even have to think about it anymore, like the bunny ears as a kid and all of that stuff. You don't have to think about it because you just tie your shoes. And so what happens is anything that you program into your mind repeatedly, your mind starts doing automatically for you, like typing. You know, if you type a lot, you don't have to think. Your fingers know where the buttons are, where the letters are and all of that. So what happens is people who meditate a lot, their brain comes up with some type of negative pattern that you would want to ultimately shift. And their brain is like, nope, I got it. I'm ignoring it already. Nope, I got it. I'm ignoring it already. And so what happens is they have a harder time seeing that pattern. Now, that is one that comes up all the time for meditation. It really, a lot of times I would rather, like, it's just, if somebody has been meditating for many years, they have a harder time identifying those patterns. So that's one thing. And another thing is what I call mental vacation meditation, where you've probably seen this before, where somebody maybe has a stressful day and then they go into meditation and they kind of picture themselves out by a waterfall or on the planet, you know, on a different planet or in the moon or wherever. And it's like, and then they go back to like life and it's, oh, stressful, stressful, stressful. Then they go meditate by the waterfall, by this, by that. Now, what happens in that situation is people are training themselves that life is stressful and checking out is good. And what happens is the brain wants to check out even more. And I got to tell you, when I work with people with Alzheimer's, the very thing that I'm trying to stop their brain from doing is just checking out automatically. And I watch people who are doing this, what I call mental vacation meditation. And it's like they put their brain in a mental vacation and they don't realize that what happens is they're checking out a lot more throughout the day. They don't even realize it. It's kind of like, you know, the car example, when you drive to your destination and you go, oh my God, did I stop at the lights? The truth of it is you wouldn't even know that you checked out, except for the fact that your physical body is at a different location. You don't even know what happened. And so what happens all the time is people are doing meditation or they're doing mental vacation meditation and their brain is checking out all the time. And so they're having a harder time functioning in life. They're having a harder time thinking about things. They're having a harder time identifying the patterns, and they're actually hindering their productivity and their ability to be able to identify patterns, and they're making it harder on themselves. And so if you're doing any type of mental vacation meditation or any silent meditation, instead take in the feeling of calmness if you want. And really, ultimately, what I'd recommend is falling in love with life. And so instead of having a meditation and checking out, take a walk around the block or two and fall in love with the sky, fall in love with the flowers that are around, the trees that are around. Just start like falling in love with how beautiful our world is. Because if you just program that feeling in every day, and you start feeling that. And that's another thing that I don't really care about with meditation is if somebody said to my childhood self, my 6-year-old self, how do you want to feel growing up? I wouldn't say relaxed. I would be like in love with life, excited, in love with people. Like I want to feel like life is amazing. I wouldn't say relaxed. And knowing that patterns breed more of the same, unless I want the most boring life in the world, I don't want to just feel relaxed in life. Right. I want to feel in love with life. I want to feel passionate and excited and laughter and fun and connecting with people. And so I just wanted to go there for a moment, just because we are talking about tricky patterns and identifying things and really changing it. And I see so often people are doing things with their mind that's hindering their ability to identify patterns and really transform them. So just.
Well, and this takes me to an example of an analogy that you used in private session with me also. Because sometimes these patterns aren't quite so subconscious. We're very conscious of it, but we're avoiding it. And the analogy you used with me, it's like, John, you're driving down the freeway and I turn your head to the left and keep driving down the freeway and try to find your exit. It's like, you can't find it. You're going to crash into something. You're like going blindly, knowing that you're eventually going to crash. But what happens if you look straight on? And you can actually see the terrain and see what's going and are willing to look at oncoming traffic and realize the speed that you're going and know that you need to turn this way and that way, but have the awareness of it. It's just surrendering into what we avoid. It's not subconscious that we're avoiding. We're very conscious that we just don't want to look at that straight on, because if we do, then what does that mean? it's powerful. It's powerful if you're willing to look straight on, because why do you want to look sideways when you're driving down the freeway going 70 miles an hour? Why do we do that to ourselves?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's profound.
Be real with what's real, create real change, and you get radical results. And by the way, I see Melanie's question here. If we can't attend live on the 4 calls, can you tap into our energy through emailed questions? The answer is yes. And that's what I always have people do. And then the recordings are all available. So yes.
Excellent. Well, as you're mentioning that again, April will type the link in the chat box again for the course. Remember, it's $147, the 4 live classes, the additional bonus call. So much to gain from it. So I hope you do take advantage of this opportunity to work with Brandy in this way. And the testimonials they're there in so many different ways. So I hope you participate. And of course, the replay of today's call will be available later this evening, and we'll put the link up in the email that goes out a little bit later. But you can always access replays by typing into your browser, maybe even saving it, beyondtheordinaryshow.com/replay. So you'll be able to come back and listen over and over again this week to the call. And Brandy, it's a phenomenal call with you always. It's so illuminating and expansive. And as much as I am familiar with your work and just a huge fan, there's always something to be received and to step into and to say yes more to. And you're just such a gift. Thank you for doing what you do and for presenting it in the way that you do.
You're so wonderful, John. And thank you likewise. Thank you for doing what you do and just being so wonderful. And we could talk for hours, because I just love and adore you. Absolutely. And thank you everybody for having me and just great questions. And it's been fun.
Yeah, it has. And again, everybody, thank you so much for being on the call, for your contribution, again, I said it before, your vulnerability, but the power in that vulnerability for all of us. It's amazing. Y'all it's never cease to surprise me. And I'm so grateful. And it's with that I bow to each one of you. Namaste. Wish you a fantastic evening and look forward to seeing you on the next call. Good night.